Good Monday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Breaking now on Morning News Now. Millions are on alert this morning as Ida barrels its way through the South after making landfall as a powerful Category 4 hurricane. The entire city of New Orleans is without power. More than 1 million people don't have electricity this morning. Damage there is described as catastrophic. And a levee in a town nearby has failed, threatening hundreds of people who did not evacuate. This powerful storm made landfall on the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, a day people on the Gulf Coast already have etched in their minds. Ida came on land near Port Fourchon, Louisiana, south of New Orleans. The damage there is already extensive, and as the morning goes on, we'll get a better idea of the damage Ida left behind. But in places like Houma, Louisiana, the damage is already catastrophic. Take a look.
Oh, that roof is coming.
And take a look at this. One hospital lost its roof during this storm. We can't forget all of this is happening in the middle of a pandemic. Hospitals across the South are already overwhelmed with COVID patients. With the power out in the New Orleans area, some hospitals are now relying on generators. Doctors and nurses are now hoping the storm does not bring in a wave of new patients and new COVID cases. As the storm heads north, we have a team covering the damage, the current conditions, and what we can expect in the coming days. Mississippi's Gulf Coast avoided a direct hit from Ida, but still felt the impact of this powerful storm. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster is in Gulfport, Mississippi, with a look at conditions there.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. You know, this wind and rain that you're seeing and that I'm feeling right now, this is something that we've been experiencing for hours now here in Gulfport, which, as a reminder, was not the center point of the storm, was not in the main storm trajectory. Here in Gulfport, there was that tropical storm warning throughout the night, and that's what we're still dealing with now. But Hurricane Ida, now Tropical Storm Ida, just to show you what that tropical storm can do, this is what those winds can lead to. So don't take that tropical storm downgrade too seriously, because that still means tree limbs can fall. That still means this heavy rain and heavy wind gusts. Last night, a wind gust of up to 74 miles an hour here in Gulfport, pieces of roofs flying off. That is the danger that you have, and that is why officials here in Gulfport have had that curfew in effect since 8 a.m. yesterday, begging and pleading with people to stay off the roads because conditions can change so quickly. And that's something that we've experienced here, where even yesterday at one point there was a break of sunshine that you saw, and then next thing you know, 20 minutes later, you have rain going essentially horizontally. Now, one thing that we're not dealing with here, fortunately, are those power outages. While you heard of the million power outages in places, or millions of people without power in places like Louisiana, here in Gulfport, it's about 93,000 in the state of Mississippi. You see right now we have power. While power did go out a little bit last night for a period of time, it came back, and you see pretty much even in the distance that power is still up. So that is the concern that you have here, that people are going to become complacent. And as the mayor told me yesterday, complacency kills. They're asking people to still stay inside because in addition to the wind and rain, there's the threat of storm surges, the river flooding, and that tornado warning and watches that continues to pop up as we watch and as we go through the morning hours. So, Joe and Savannah, that's the situation here in Gulfport. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Shaq, thank you. Stay safe.
Let's head right to New Orleans. NBC's Jay Gray is there. Jay, if you can hear us, good to see you.
Jay, good morning. Okay,
Joe,
looks
good
like
to talk to you as well, and good to get a break from the elements here.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about what you're seeing there. We know the city's in the dark this morning. Any word on how long people might be without power?
Yeah, Savannah, I think it's going to be a while. Look, there are 1 million plus people just in the New Orleans metro area without power. And the reason why is the transmission lines that bring that power into the city. 8 of them are in the Mississippi River. Extracting those and repairing them is going to take some time. While we do have a break from the wind that was very severe here and the rain that fell straight for 16 or so hours, I want to give you a look at what we have behind us here. And it's a portion of a rooftop that was thrown into the French Quarter. And what you can see is that as it was pushed into the French Quarter. It pulled down an overhead street sign here. The arm that held that up mangled and twisted, pulled to the ground. As you work up and to the balcony, what you'll see is some shutters that were pulled away from doorways, the doors forced open by the severe wind that whipped through this area. And that's across the French Quarter. This is not extraordinary thing. You see this across the French Quarter, along with broken glass. You hear alarms across most every block in the French Quarter. Where did the roof come from? It came from this building just across Decatur Street here. That is the Jack's Brewery building. Inside, you've got shops, restaurants, businesses. It's a tourist attraction here, a popular one. And this big piece of the roof that you see behind us, guys, that's just one section that's gone, but throughout the French Quarter, you find other sections of this roof. So it's a mess inside there, I'm sure, as well, and we'll find out more when the sun comes up here.
All right, Jay, great. Jay, thanks so much for your reporting. Appreciate it. So near New Orleans is Baton Rouge, which was spared from a direct hit. Ida's slow movement after landfall meant hours, though, of wind and rain for Louisiana's capital. With the storm moving north, we're now getting a look at what it did there. For more on that, we are joined by Kurt Monte. He's Chief of Public Information for the Baton Rouge Fire Department. Kurt, good morning to you. We've been hearing about some dire stories in such places like LaPlace, south of you, where thousands are in need of rescue. What's the situation for you guys? I know the wind wasn't quite as bad. You got hit around 10 o'clock last night, but what's the latest on how the situation is in Baton Rouge?
Yes, fortunately, we didn't get the direct impact that was first thought that we would, but we do have, we do have power issues. We have several trees down through the night. Our rescue teams were out and they ran 123 calls or responses and rescued 10 people, most of those from homes or where trees have fallen over on top of the home. They were able to extricate several families from their homes and get them to better shelter. So we're still assessing the situation. We don't have any cell service here from what I can tell this morning. And, that we're not out of the woods per se yet. And then when daylight comes and the message is for people just to stay put because it's so dangerous with the power lines being down, and we still don't know what structural damage we have. We're just getting into a daybreak here, so we'll be able to assess the situation a lot more then.
We understand the city spent about $20 million to improve the drainage system before this storm. Do you know how it's holding up right now?
Yeah, I mean, drainage-wise, obviously flooding is an issue that we've dealt with many times here in Baton Rouge, unfortunately. But we didn't get the rain that was first predicted. But we're still waiting to see what the impact's going to be of the surge. That has a lot to do with how our rivers drain, and it's not really something that the system can help if you have that water being pushed back up and it has nowhere to go. So hopefully the rain will subside. We're still getting a little bit of rain right now. The winds are still blowing, but not near as bad. So again, just wanting to push that message for people to stay put. Don't get out and sightsee. It's very dangerous. We still have first responders responding. Our energy crews will be out trying to restore power as best they can. And it's just best for people to stay put.
There was no evacuation order for Baton Rouge. Most places didn't have one simply because of the time frame and how quickly this thing just accelerated. But knowing that most people stayed in town and hunkered down, does that change how you're going to approach everything this morning?
Yeah, we did open two pre-landfall shelters here in Baton Rouge. One was at our River Center, and another one was at the FG Clark Activity Center, which is on Southern University's campus. Last totals I had seen before last night, we had a couple hundred people that were sheltering with us. But that's it. This with people being here, we're not a city that's evacuated, and we are a large municipality here. So the main thing is for people just to stay home, not get out on the roads, not to try to go out. There's really nothing. The power is out nearly everywhere here in the city. There's lines down everywhere. There's a lot of trees. There's still a lot of debris. Again, we haven't had the daylight to be able to assess the total damages. But the good news so far is we're not reporting any fatalities here in the parish, and hopefully we can keep that statistic where it's at.
That is good news to hear. Kurt Monty with the Baton Rouge Fire Department. We know you've got a busy morning ahead, so thank you for taking some time to join us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
And we are keeping a close eye on the path of Ida this morning.
Yeah, and we actually have some new live pictures as the sun rises over New Orleans. This is our first real look at the extent of Ida's destruction. NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns has been tracking the storm, and he has the latest for us.
Good morning. Yeah, Ida has been an incredibly resilient storm. Finally weakened down to a tropical storm early this morning. I mean, the fact that it made landfall as a major Category 4 hurricane, 150-mile-per-hour winds, and it was 9 hours later, it was still a major hurricane. Absolutely incredible. The wind damage is going to, once we see all the effects later on today when we can get the helicopters up to get the pictures of it, it's just incredible the damage that's going to be in southeastern Louisiana. And then, of course, the rainfall problems that we're still dealing with. So let me give you the latest from the Hurricane Center. We're looking at 60-mile-per-hour maximum sustained winds. So the winds have really come down. The winds have significantly weakened with this storm. I do not expect a lot of additional wind damage in Mississippi. Isolated power outages heading up towards Jackson and areas like Meridian. And as far as the forecast goes, the winds will extend northwards, and at the same time those winds down towards the coast will begin to relax, and that's why we'll be able to get out there and assess the damage and get to see who needs help and kind of get those rescues out there to people that need them, especially for any of those flash flood emergencies. Current wind gusts about 43 in Hattiesburg. So my rule of thumb is usually 40 miles per hour or above as isolated power outages, and that's going to be about the worst of them here on it. Notice New Orleans, the winds are much lower now, only in the 30-mile-per-hour range. And how about these max winds that we saw? Down along landfall, Port Fourchon, 172-mile-per-hour wind gust on a ship. So that was a little above ground level, but still impressive. Grand Isle, 146. The highest in New Orleans, by the way, was 87. The additional threats today are all about thunderstorms, heavy rain, flash flooding, and the possibility of isolated tornadoes. We could still see those this morning, right through this afternoon, areas of Mississippi, Alabama, even a little sliver there of Florida near Pensacola. And then the forecast tonight and tomorrow takes the storm into areas of Tennessee, possibly looking at the storm will curve down through Kentucky. Once it hits the mountainous regions of the Appalachians, watch out for that flash flooding threat in the mountains, and then eventually all the way through the Northeast. So what does this all mean? We have 58 million people that still could see flash flooding impacts from this storm over the next couple of days. Of course, the grave concerns are the flash flood warnings down where the storm is now along the Gulf Coast. And here's the additional rainfall totals. Areas of Mississippi getting a ton of rain, and then the storm will push up into areas of the Northeast and the Tennessee Valley. I mean, another huge rain event for areas of New England should cause additional significant flooding, guys. So we're done with just about the wind and the storm surge, but we still have a lot of rain to go with this storm.
All right. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Let's now go to NBC News correspondent Ron Allen. He is in Jackson, Mississippi for us this morning. Ron, good morning. So as the sun starts to come up, I can see there where you still are. It looks windy and rainy. Tell us about what you're seeing there this morning.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of rain. This started a few hours ago and has been picking up as the hours have been going on through the morning. Sheets of rain. The wind is picking up as well. There have been gusts reported in the state as much as 50, 60 miles per hour. But again, it comes in bands. We are still north of where the storm center is. It's moving very slowly, as we've heard reported throughout the morning. The peak and the worst of it is supposed to happen here later this afternoon. But I can tell you right now, it's already getting pretty bad. We're hunkered down outside of a hotel that's become something of a refuge. All the cars in this parking lot are people from Louisiana who have come here to seek shelter. It's about a 3-hour drive or so from New Orleans to Jackson on a good day, and people are here with all their possessions and families and pets, and they're just huddled by the TV and on their phones trying to get word of what's going on back home. Here, the concern is about a lot of rain. The area, like so much of the rest of the country, is already saturated, and they're talking about 4 to 6 more inches of rain as the day goes on. Everything is shut down, of course, and schools are closed, businesses are closed, there's very little traffic on the roadways, And there's a big concern about flooding. There's a lot of areas around the city that flood historically, and that's probably going to happen again. So the word, as we hear in so many places, is for people to stay home, hunker down, let this thing blow through. It's moving very slowly, we know. The hope, of course, is that it picks up speed and gets out of here. But for now, this is where we are at this moment. But in a few hours, it's expected to be even worse than this as the storm moves north.
And Ron, just the fact that you are 3 hours from New Orleans, I guess, really tells us the size of this storm and why it's presenting such a huge problem all along the Gulf Coast, right?
Yes, and we're at the storm is below us. So, when we were flying here from New York, from the East Coast, we were flying in the direction of the storm. The storm's coming at us. We got in safely last night. It wasn't even raining. But overnight, as the storm has moved, I've heard Bill Cairns and others say it's in the single digits miles per hour. It's sort of sitting over these areas and just dumping rain, and it's steady. And I mean, I'm standing here in a fixed position because it just keeps coming in waves and waves and waves. And again, it's easing up a little bit, but this is the beginning of it. And as the storm keeps moving north, the center of the storm is expected to pass right over Jackson late this afternoon, early evening. So, again, this is the beginning of it, and it's going to get much worse, we fear. Guys, back to you.
All right, Ron Allen. Ron, stay safe, reporting from Jackson, Mississippi. Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron. Stay safe. Let's now go to Houma, Louisiana, which was hit hard by Ida after it made landfall. That's where we find NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky.
Morgan, let's hear what you got.
Hey, Joe, Savannah, it is going to be a beyond challenging day for tens of thousands of people here in the city of Houma and Terrebonne Parish following Ida. I have heard from multiple people in the last hour that this is the worst hurricane they have ever experienced, and this is a place that knows them all too well. Katrina, Rita, Gustav have all struck and made an impact here, but it has been Ida that has left an incredible trail of damage behind. Those wind gusts upwards of 140 miles an hour have essentially turned nearly every building or block into scenes like you see behind me. Buildings reduced to rubble, collapsed onto the ground, and we know that getting from point A to point B made incredibly difficult by power lines and power poles that are blocking roadways right now. The concern is, how much more does this damage go? How further does it go? Because first responders and people who live here have really had to hunker down for the better part of yesterday once Ida rolled in here. And part of the problem is that one of the eye walls of Ida, where those strong winds are the absolute worst, seemingly stalled over parts of this area. And so there was never a reprieve for hours, just lashing homes and buildings with those winds. They have a power plant here in the city of Houma, rated to a Category 4 hurricane. It had to be evacuated because the roof started to be peeled off by Ida's winds that were so incredibly strong. There is no power, there is no water, and frankly, there is no chance or no idea as to when either one of those things will be returning here in this community. We are about 63 miles southwest of New Orleans, and folks here, they feel cut off because as of right now, they're living in the dark and they don't know how bad Ida was, but they have a very good idea that when the sun comes up today, it's only going to be worse. Joe, Savannah, will send it back to you.
All right, Morgan Chesky from Houma, Louisiana. Stay safe.
We don't yet know the full extent of the damage caused by Ida, but we do know that federal emergency aid is coming to Louisiana.
Yeah, President Biden has approved a disaster declaration for the state. Flooding could persist along the Gulf and the storm's path in the coming days.
NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli joins us now from Washington. So, Mike, can you tell us more about this presidential disaster declaration? How is he responding to the hurricane so far?
Well, Joe, just think about all these crises converging at once for this president. Obviously, we're just less than 24 hours now from that deadline in Afghanistan for the withdrawal of U.S. forces. Yesterday, the president traveling to Dover Air Force Base to receive those heroes who died in combat last week. But then you had the president go straight from Dover Air Force Base to FEMA headquarters, where he urged those in the affected areas here in Louisiana to listen closely to the emergency officials and their warnings. Take a listen to some of what the president said yesterday.
To the people of the Gulf Coast, I want you to know that we're praying for the best and planning prepared for the worst. As soon as the storm passes, we're going to put the country's full might behind the rescue and recovery.
This morning, the president will have that Situation Room briefing for the latest on Afghanistan, and then White House officials say he'll have multiple updates throughout the day from his Homeland Security team to get the latest on Ida and its track, which, as you've been detailing this morning, will take it through much of the east coast of the U.S.
Now, Mike, how has FEMA already responded to this catastrophe? What's happening on the ground there in terms of a response?
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the lessons from Katrina, which was, of course, 16 years to the day after Ida struck the Louisiana coast, was that the federal emergency response needs to be ahead of the storm, not wait and see what happens. And so, according to a release we got from FEMA yesterday, there are a number of assets that were already in place to aid with the assistance at this point. 3.5 million meals, 2.5 million liters of water, 139 tarps, and significantly, given the loss of power in New Orleans, 185 generators had already been positioned down in Louisiana. But obviously more is going to be needed, and so that disaster declaration that the president signed yesterday will continue to prioritize Louisiana in getting more relief as it identifies its needs in the days ahead.
And Mike, speaking of lessons from Katrina, I'm thinking of the possibility of a presidential visit. Clearly, we know it's very early right now. We don't yet know the full extent of the damage, but have there even been early rumblings of a possible visit by the president to Louisiana or areas hit hard by this?
Yeah, you're right, Joe. It is too early to say. The White House will obviously keep us updated if the president will travel. Of course, the biggest concern at this point is getting in the way. The president would not want any of the security preparations that are necessary ahead of a presidential visit to the area to distract from getting these disaster needs met in the local areas, the affected areas. But of course, this is a president that will want to see things on the ground if at all possible. And so we should stay tuned for the president's travel schedule to change in the days ahead.
Right. Mike Memley at the White House. Mike, thanks so much for your reporting this morning. We appreciate it.